going to be interviewing a World War II evacuee's child. Please welcome to the studio, Mr. Michael Stuteley!
Hello.
I have some questions to ask you.
Right, go ahead.
How did you feel when you were evacuated?
Very sad, really. Although I was evacuated with my mother and my grandmother at the time, it was still a sad and uprooting experience because we had to move from our house and all our furniture we had in our house had to be put into a storage place because it couldn't be left there in case it got bombed. So it went into storage, and then we went down to my mother's sister's house, who was in Farnham in Surrey, and we lived there for about 3 or 4 months before we had to move from there and go into what they call, what do they call it in those days? Digs, I suppose, where we were evacuees and we lived in other people's houses.
Interesting.
And one of the houses we lived in was a big mansion house called the Bourne, and it was just outside Farnham.
Just outside Farnham?
I always remember the lady there saying to me, "We don't mind you coming and playing in the garden, but I don't want you picking any of the apples."
What? Do you remember the lady's name?
Oh no, it was too long ago. There was a lady, it was a lady, her name was Lady so-and-so.
Okay. How did you travel to your new home?
We travelled by train from Waterloo Station down to Farnham in Surrey. And then we got a bus from the station up to my auntie's house, which was, I can remember it now, was number 3 Osborne Road.
Who did you get evacuated to?
My auntie's house. My auntie was my Auntie Mary.
Did you go to school?
It was a sort of difficult thing to do because schooling in those days, well then, was very difficult, and my mother couldn't get me into the state school because it was full, so she paid for a private school, and the private school was...
Where was your private school?
It was in Farnham, and the private school's name was Miss Morals. That's the name of the teacher, the head who ran the private school, so they used to call it Miss Morals. And I only went there for a couple of hours a day because that's all I could do in those days.
Did your mum or dad fight in the war?
My father did. He was in the REME, Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, and he went into Germany and crossed the Rhine. One of the first soldiers to cross the Rhine when they pushed Germany back into Berlin.
Oh, how did you amuse yourself?
I don't know. No, that's difficult because I just played really... I had an elder cousin who lived there, and I played with him a bit, you know.
Was your older cousin your auntie's son?
That's right, yes, yes. That's good.
So he lived with you?
Yes, and but we couldn't live there for very long. We had to move out of there. And as I said, we went as evacuees. I think you went on a list by the council, and when vacancies came up, they pushed you into these houses. Because people in the town volunteered to take in evacuees, and we were moved a couple of times. At the last place was this big house called the Bourne.
How old were you when you were evacuated?
I must have been about 5. The war started in... I was born in 1936, right?
So you were 3 when the war started.
And I must have been about 5 because the first 2 years of the war, the first year of the war, nothing really happened.
Nothing really happened because nothing came over.
No, they called that the phony war because there was nothing going on. And then after that we moved, as I said, into Farnham. Another little thing I remember has come to mind, we used to go to dinner in what they called the British restaurants, and they were set up by the government to make sure all the children had equal amount of food and could get food when they wanted it. And they were a massive place made of metal, tin, like a shelter.
Was everyone allowed in there or just evacuees?
Just evacuees. They would go in there. They'd have to pay for the food, but it was a reduced amount of food, and we would just go in there, sit down, and you'd get, like, I suppose, like, not quite like school dinners, because they're a bit better nowadays, but the same sort of thing. You go around with a tray, and a dollop of potato would go on your plate, and a dollop of vegetables, and so on, and then you'd eat it. Because that, making sure you'd get your food that you needed.
Thank you. Thank you for watching Echo Radio Series 5. Now we will close down. Bye!